Okay, guys, you guys ready? Okay. This is a question about PBD Fest.
Just hold the mic a little closer to your mouth.
Okay, got me? Okay. So this is a question about PBD Fest, and this person asked about redirecting the PBD Fest from September back to June. How do you feel about that? Why was it changed? Just kind of expound on that for us.
Great. So, and I'll answer the unanswered question, the unasked question as well. First year, we made some changes to PPD Fest and heard loud and clear from the community that they didn't like the new location. And I was quick to say we screwed up. And so we changed it back to the old footprint. And I think it's important to have public leaders that are willing to say they made a mistake and make a change. And so we moved it back to the old footprint. Everyone appreciated that and wished it wasn't changed in the first place, but that was fixed. The reason the date changed was driven by feedback that we had received from businesses that, we look at activations throughout the year to try to stimulate economic activity, to spread out city events and activations. And June's busy already. June has all the graduations and other public events, including Rhode Pride. And so the businesses downtown on the footprint said we have a gap in commercial and economic activity and public events post Labor Day. And so that's why the move was made. And our plan is to keep it in September. PPD Fest has evolved over the years. It's never quite the same festival every year. It doesn't mean that there won't be future changes. But the date change in particular was driven by feedback that we had received from businesses downtown on the footprint who love it, who find it to be really good for their businesses, but said, we do fine in June. We struggle in September after Labor Day. And that was the rationale for the change.
I believe it's important that we have leaders that will take community feedback into account well before decisions are ever made. And I know that many artists were not consulted initially when the date was changed in addition to the location. I'll never forget the day that it was announced, and so many artists who had contributed to PPD Fest over its initial years and were part of the origin felt like it just came out of left field. I believe that the community has been very clear over the years that PPD Fest should be earlier in the summer. To do it in September when school has already started, once folks have gone back into their routines, it makes it more disruptive in order to be able to have a festival that, again, so many neighbors look forward to during a time where they have more access to recreation, whether it's taking time off work, whether it's being on summer vacation. I want a teacher to be able to enjoy PPD Fest without the worry that they gotta go back to school on Monday. Same goes for our students. So our administration would look towards shifting PPD Fest back towards either June, July, or taking a close look at August. But we do not want to have it in September during a time where, again, so many folks are going back to their normal routines. I also think we should be thoughtful and note that our neighbors are responsible and we can handle open beverage containers across various parts of downtown. I remember I spoke to a friend who told me how special it felt. That as a child, he always spent a lot of time near Kennedy Plaza, near City Hall, near Washington Street. And he said, it hits different, the fact that I was able to just walk around with the beer in my hand, holding my child's hand right on Washington Street where I used to walk when I was going to school. It's a small thing like that I think really matters. And that's the type of spirit that PPD Fest originated in once the Allures administration had launched it. And so I believe very strongly that we should be very thoughtful in terms of moving the date back, taking the actual experiences of what artists and small business owners have said, many of whom have shared with me that this new date in September has actually reduced revenue significantly, and they prefer for it to be earlier in the year. And these are the accounts of many restaurants and bars in particular that are sharing this feedback directly.
So as you all know, Providence is its community, right? Really at the heart of all of this, the arts community, the community overall, we like to pitch in, right? So this person is asking, what can we do to aid in the reality of these plans that you've laid out for us here on the stage today? We want to help you, bring this to fruition. So what hands-on approach can we provide to help with this manifestation?
So my administration is going to take a lot of pride in hosting public community meetings and gatherings throughout the year. As a state representative, I've been proud to host over 50 community meetings at our local library to talk about what's going on at the State House. Throughout today, we've talked about a lot of different initiatives geared towards artists, specifically artists of color, in addition to independent artists that are struggling. But a program that one would be eligible for is only as good as a program where they're actually aware that it exists and thereafter they're able to apply and then be a part of it. We could talk about these residency programs, about improving relationships between our Providence public school students, local artists, and the same for our Providence housing authorities. But if the artists who have so much to offer and then benefit from don't know about it, what's the point? It'll make for a very nice press release, but it's not going to do much in terms of the impact on the ground. So the ways that community will be able to help is to help encourage neighbors to be a part of these public gatherings as we're finalizing the rules as to what this program will look like when it comes to being able to have this type of residency. It's about making sure that our neighbors are aware that we're having teatro in El Parque, and we want to make sure that we have volunteers that are willing to go out to some of our small businesses and allow them to be able to put up a poster to promote the arts. I think there's so much that the city can do to help mobilize neighbors to be a part of the process, so when there is an arts event happening in our backyard, it is filled to the brim because neighbors were aware that it's happening. When we're launching residency programs, we want to be able to have a waiting list of artists that have so much to offer because the demand is so high, but most importantly, because government made sure that you were aware that it was happening. And that's the focal point of our administration. It's going to be centered around communication and making sure each and every program that an artist would benefit from, that they're aware of it.
So I think most of the people in this room are already doing the work. It's the people that aren't in this room that we need to reach. There are people who have been on boards of organizations for decades that are looking for fresh participation and fresh energy. There are organizations that are struggling with fundraising, that need new donors and new supporters. It's not you all, it's the broader community that I think accesses, enjoys, and in some cases takes for granted the cultural infrastructure that exists in this city, but then doesn't do anything to help sustain it. And so I've always seen part of my job is both to be cheerleader and sometimes fundraiser in chief, not for the city, but for other organizations, and regularly speak at community events for these organizations to try to get people to open their wallets, to raise their hand, to get involved. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do right now. I will say for the folks who are here, because every voice matters, is two things. One, I am genuinely enthusiastic about the opportunities now that the schools are coming back into local control, and as we develop opportunities for partnership with the arts community to work with our students, we will be looking for folks who want to work but also get paid to work, because I think it is a core principle of certainly my administration that we pay artists. We don't ask them to volunteer their time, we pay them. And then two, the representative rightly points out, and sometimes it's hard and frustrating for us where we feel like we have done everything we know how to do to promote a thing, and still nobody knows about it. And so by following the Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism on social media, by sharing concert announcements, a great example is that I mentioned earlier, the Eli Fund, which is a series of summer concerts around the city in our public parks with local talent who are paid to perform, sometimes with very small or limited audiences because of the lack of information. We flyer, we promote, we talk to the rec centers, we talk to the council people, we put out notices, but still some people don't know about it, and so we all can play a very small role in that, but can add up to real impact to help create audience for these artists, but also to create moments that is just free and fun and community building in our city, of which we regularly create, but almost always has additional capacity.
We had a couple hours, we could cover everybody's questions.
Well, I just want to make it clear that we apologize in advance that not everybody's question's going to get asked. And sorry about that. And I also want to say that I think we have two gentlemen here that both love the city. And I think that's pretty evident in all of this. And I want to say. Okay, here's the question from the audience that I was given, and it's a good one. So, art is incredibly powerful and helps a wide range of people, including folks with cognitive disabilities. Would you consider setting aside funding to expand on specific programs for various communities, such as those who identify being on the autism spectrum? Say the rest of it.
Where? So more generally, where should health and the arts intersect within the city's structures?
Yes, I think it's important that art be accessible to all, and that means people who need to experience art in specialized settings. The city's a proud funder of Project Discovery at Trinity, for example, and they do specific sensory performances to ensure that folks on the autism spectrum can enjoy those performances. There's also a really wonderful group here, the Spectrum Theater Ensemble, which specializes in sensory appropriate performances, but then also interestingly and importantly, trains other theaters on how to do that. And it's very worthy of support. It's one of the ways in which Providence, Bert, you said earlier, we sort of punch above our weight. This is like a great example of it. We have theater companies from around the country that fly in to train with them to then go back and perform so that their communities can be accessible to all, that their performances can be accessible to all. And so when we think about city grant funding through the Departments of Arts, Culture, and Tourism, and then our sort of partner agency, which is a way in which we can leverage or maximize our funding, which is the Providence Tourism Council, we should be looking for diversity of grant making. Earlier we were talking about artists of color, but also ensuring that these are performances or representative works or public art installations that are accessible to all or that serve underserved communities, which can and does include those on the autism spectrum.
So earlier when I spoke about the incredible work that Mount Pleasant Library does with their monthly art exhibits, I often think back to last fall when they hosted the Rhode Center. And they had clients from the Rhode Center be the ones that were the actual artists whose art was actively on display. And then thereafter, they had an opportunity to participate in an artist talk where they were the ones leading the discussion and talk about what inspired them to create that type of art. And so we have organizations that are actively working with many of our community members with cognitive disabilities, in addition to independent caregivers. We have many independent caregivers that work directly with young people and middle-aged adults with disabilities, and they're able to receive support from the state in order to do that. But when we talk about these types of partnerships, it's also about creating an experience. And so some of the theater work that has been actively mentioned, I think should be a part of how we make sure that any caregiver within the city of Providence, for example, is able to receive a subsidized ticket to be able to see a performance. It's about making sure that we are meeting so many of our people where they are, because again, not everyone is a part of the Rhode Center per se, even though it offers incredible opportunities. Some prefer to go the independent caregiver route. And I think there are countless opportunities that we can create for independent caregivers to access and make sure that their clients get the exposure to the arts, like the partnerships that we can see within our community libraries of Providence, how we can make sure that our rec centers are more accessible by being able to offer these types of arts. And so our administration would focus on making sure that we establish what would be a very clear pathway in place for any caregiver in Providence to be able to understand this is what you would be entitled to. These are the types of programs that are going to be accessible for you and your client to be able to enjoy, whether it's a community library of Providence, whether it's a production performance at Teatro Ecas, because the client you're working with comes from a multilingual household. And of course, continuing our partnership with the Rhode Center, making sure that their clients are able to have access to perhaps a resident, an artist resident from Providence who's going into the center and engaging in the arts with, again, so many of our neighbors that otherwise just wouldn't have access. So for me, again, it's always about how do we expand access to a point where it's universal.
Thank you. This one I'm going to add a little layer of interpretation to. So apologize to whoever wrote it if that's unwelcome. But the question is, how will Providence support the careers of individual artists rather than only funding projects? And my interpretation of that is towards sustainability. How do we create a arts community that will last more than one funding cycle?
I think our Office of Economic Development can do so much more to support independent gig artists in addition to some of our small business owners. We have a thriving nightlife economy that we love to brag about, but you talk to a manager of an establishment, a nightlife entity, and they'll tell you how difficult it is for them to be able to manage existing partnerships with the city or some of the complaints that they might receive. So I believe that in order to be able to sustain, to the question, a career, it's about making sure that the Office of Economic Development is seen as an asset and a partner. Specifically, I would want to work towards establishing a merchants association filled with gig artists, like graphic designers, like those that cultivate spoken word. We should be able to have an Office of Economic Development that is seeing them as an asset and is going to be available to be able to hear their thoughts, their questions, and their concerns, and be able to activate more spaces, because it's not just about, again, a grant cycle. This is about creating opportunity. This is about making sure that when an organization like Newhouse wants to be able to host something in our community, that we're creating opportunities for them, not just in downtown Providence, but in various parts of our city. So we're going to work towards establishing a merchants association for independent gig artists. We want to make sure beyond that the Office of Economic Development is seen as an asset to some of our small businesses that are focused on nightlife. Because nightlife employs a lot of artists, because DJs are artists. And if we talk about sustainability in the city of Providence, then we need to talk about affordability. So many of our artists cannot afford to continue calling Providence home. And I'm not talking about studio space, I'm talking about whether or not they're able to sleep at night in the city where they practice and produce their art. And that is why I proudly support rent stabilization, which would cap rent hikes at 4% a year, because many artists right now in this moment are renting and are finding themselves in endless cycles where they have to move to various parts of the city because their rent went up and now they've been priced out, or perhaps they find themselves completely out of Providence, period.
So I think there's a series of progressive steps to help. And I know the question was to get beyond single-use entity opportunities for funding from the city, but it is important to restate that this city pays its artists. And so that is a fundamental starting point to ensure that we're not asking for people to donate their time and talent and work, that we compensate them for that, and we do. Secondly is to help make those opportunities predictable and recurring. Once you've entered into the city's either grant cycle or funding cycle or created that relationship, that it gets easier and easier, and it starts to be something that you can do yearly. If you're a performing artist, for example, at one of our events or through one of our grant making opportunities. Third is to help create either audience or customers, depending on what the nature of your art making or your business is. And through all of our work throughout the year, the activations that we do, which we've kind of hinted at a few times tonight, we are very intentional at trying to distribute 12 months of activities around the city to create vibrancy throughout the year, but also to create opportunities and audience and customers throughout the year. And so cultural festivals, holiday opportunities, other wintertime activations, PVD Fest, and then when we see grand opportunities like we did this summer with the World Cup, to always have a mind towards creating commercial opportunities for makers, performers, culinary artists, and others. And that is in the forefront of how we think about these things, because the benefit is to the local creative economy. And then finally to understand and treat and then serve our artists as small business owners, as they are. And so, we have a brand new one-stop business center. The Department of Economic Development is co-located with the Department of Arts, Culture, and Tourism, which is co-located with the Licensing Bureau and our Small Business Loan Fund. And so, while the relationship may not exist with licensing, they probably know Joe Wilson or someone else on our team, and those resources and facilitation for those businesses, because that's what they are now easily accessible in one place with a front door that they know and are familiar with.
So we've been pretty tough on you this evening, so we're gonna ask this last question, which is a little bit lighter. So for both of you, who is your favorite band, musician, or artist?
Only not because he's here. But I gotta give a lot of love to Vlad G. If we're talking local artists, local spoken word artists has been doing incredible work, specifically when it comes to making sure that other artists have a similar opportunity. Because, Vlad, I don't want to speak for you, but I know that as a young black man, it has been difficult at times to be able to try to find venues and spaces where you feel like you're actually being heard and that you have an audience that actually resonates with your own experiences and what it is that you're sharing. And so I think about the times that you've pulled up to Crib, times that you've pulled up to AS220. My favorite memory was just this past year when we pulled up to Brass Monkey, and you had a whole collective series of different artists that all got together to tell their truth. And so I admire that a lot. And so again, I think spoken word, I've mentioned it several times because I just feel like it is something that oftentimes gets overlooked beyond the visual arts. And so many of our kids are talented, they just don't know it. They listen to drill rap, not necessarily understanding that in of itself, it's a form of spoken word once you remove the instrumental. And so I want to make sure that spoken word artists like Vlad are elevating, that they continue to provide that layer of support to our city, to our neighbors, because we all have that type of hidden talent. I was once someone who tried slam poetry at AS220, and once I was ranked a 4 out of 10, I never went again. But nonetheless, it was something I enjoyed doing. And it was now something that I'm able to live vicariously through Vlad and other artists like himself.
Tracy, you should come to some of our other forums. This has not been tough on us. Listen, there's so much talent in this community, and it's not gratuitous because he disclosed it earlier. But there are a couple visual artists here in Providence that I love, and that I'm excited to say that I have a work of theirs. Bert is one of them. Mark Friedman is another. Jordan Seabury is enormously talented, and it is. I have a house that I'm excited to say is full of Providence art, and that's a point of pride and for me. And some of it was unfinished work by Mark from a garage sale, but it was created here and depicts our lovely city, and is something that we have national or international talents right here in Providence, Rhode Island.
Did you want to get harder on them before we wrap up?
No.
Neither of you mentioned a band. You mentioned your favorite artists. Did you want to go on the record as a favorite band?
I will not be let back into Holiday Inn or some of our DIY spaces if I were to name a specific band. I want to give a shout out to all the venues that allow our bands to actually have space. I know once Dusk shut down in the Valley neighborhood, there were a lot of neighbors that took matters into their own hands. They brought to life Pixis over in Onlyville, which again is where I'm able to enjoy the same type of music I was able to enjoy at Dusk.
Yeah, I think it's well known I'm not a late night guy, so I'm not hanging out listening to live music late in Providence. It's just not who I am.
I saw you at the Philharmonic recently.
A regular there.
But I have to say, I will say pocket wrench because I was still wearing a pea coat and I ended up in a mosh pit on accident. So there is some footage that exists out there of a man in a pea coat surrounded by a lot of folks in tank tops in a mosh pit. Thankfully, I survived the day.
All right, we are wrapping up. If you guys have any closing comments that you'd like to make, there are no further questions, so it's just a chance to address the room, and then we will call it a night. I have a lot of people to thank, so give me a chance after your closing comments to do that. Who'd like to go first?
So I'll be brief. It's been a late night. First of all, thank you all for sticking in with us, and thank you for this important conversation about something that's so central to this community's identity. And one of the reasons that Providence is not just like any other city in America is because of our arts community and the cultural capital that we have here. I think, I mentioned it earlier, I think Providence continues to lead the way in terms of how we engage the arts, how we engage artists in our decision making, and it is ingrained in so many facets of city life and how the city itself functions. I also think that it's really important that we have sustainable and predictable and realistic plans for the future, and then surround ourselves with talented individuals. I'm enormously proud, and I think one of the better decisions I've made was hiring Joe Wilson Jr. as the city's Director of Arts, Culture, and Tourism, and then the team that he has helped build, and then to support them and advocate for additional funding and put it in the budget every year. This city can do more. The environment right now, a lot of it because of federal cuts or changes to other challenges that are coming in from the outside, is tough, but we will continue to do more throughout a second term. And on September 9th, I'm asking for all of your votes. Thank you very much.
Well, neighbors, thank you all again for sticking even after halftime. So again, it is an absolute pleasure to be able to focus specifically just on the arts. But I also want us to remember that all art in nature in of itself is political. And political decisions impact artists. And so as your next mayor, I'm committed to making sure that when decisions are being made about whether or not we cap rent increases, whether or not we prioritize having affordable spaces where artists can create within our city's budget, you're going to have a mayor that will look out for your interests and is going to fight for you. You're going to have a mayor that will embrace the creative capital throughout the year, not just during a given festival, but will embrace the artists and make it known to our neighbors all across the city who may not be exposed to the arts on a regular basis that there is so much talent right here in our backyard that you can find at local venues, that you will be able to find at your parks, and that as a city, we'll do everything we can to make sure that we're promoting, uplifting, and empowering the artists who make Providence the creative capital. The artists who deserve to continue being able to live and creating in our city. Because there will be for-profit interests over the next several years that will be in conflict with the arts. Whether it's the future of Onlyville, whether it's the future of Valley, there will be decisions that have to be made, and we need a mayor that is going to stand up to them. We need a mayor that will not accept donations from corporate, for-profit real estate entities that want to buy up, gentrify our neighborhoods, and displace the artists that have made our community special. And I'm going to be the mayor that does just that. Because when we talk about building a Providence for all, it's about making sure that we build a city all of our neighbors, and especially our artists, can afford and feel safe calling home. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to our panelists, Umberto, Shahida. I get one name that I get stuck on, and Tracy. We want to thank Think Tank. We want to thank the Southside Cultural Center once again. And thank you to Mr. Smiley. Thank you to Mr. Morales. We appreciate you taking the time to do this. We know it's late, and we know you're probably seeing way more of each other than of your families or anything else at this point. So we appreciate it. And thank you to the audience. Thank you for those questions. We're really sorry that we couldn't get to all of them, but we're keeping them, so they might come up later or in print. We hope you found this informative. Don't forget to vote on September 9th. Woo!